Hey there. Welcome to Gimme Empathy. I'm sick. My name is Scott, but I'm also sick, as you can probably tell from my voice. Thanks for tuning in for another week. I've just come back from the doctor. Was sitting in the waiting room for over an hour with the gentle sounds of Channel 9 Monday night primetime television to keep me company, along with the two other people waiting in there. Jesus Christ, the kind of stuff they put on at the family hour is unsettling. There's always like some dreadful current affairs show with like a man and a woman screaming at each other with bleep, bleep, all this censored swearing. And then there was something about it squatting and someone living there they shouldn't have been. And then there was like a semi-advert for Coles because the families are doing it tough. All the families, it's hard going. But it was just an ad for fucking Coles. Jesus Christ. But yeah, I have another episode this week. This is sorry, I haven't been sick all year. I think this is what my excursion to Melbourne did to me. My darling little niece Maddie was sick. Perhaps it was her, perhaps it were the plane loads of people I was exposed to. But I finally cracked it with a virus that's make it very difficult to swallow and talk. I had a lot of difficulty getting my breakfast down this morning. Anyway, this episode features Lisa Kunde, who I met only a few months ago at the Rock and Roll Writers Festival, which was held at the Old Museum here in Brisbane. I met her through a mutual friend, Branko, and together we spent some time together. Somehow met up with Roger Shepherd, the founder of New Zealand's famous Flying Nun Records, and we ended up talking to him at the bar after the first night of the festival for what seemed like a very long time. And we've got the picture to prove it. I might post the picture on the Facebook page. And Lisa's a very interesting person. The format of this is a little bit different. So normally I talk about people's values and habits and their current lives that they're living. But with Lisa, what I really wanted to talk about was her past and her whole story. Because Lisa was in a grunge band in the early 90s here in Brisbane called Gravelrash, previously known as Fuzz Babes. And I was just really interested to hear her story and to hear what the scene was like at that time in the early 90s. So this episode is a bit more of a chronological life story of a person, and I might do that sometimes from time to time. There's no set form for this podcast. I'm just out to have a chat with people, really. Lisa's also a psychologist, and one of her particular areas of research is suicide. So if suicide isn't a thing you particularly want to hear about, although we don't go into a lot of specifics about specific cases, but in general, if that's not something you want to hear about, then perhaps give the second half of this episode a miss. All right, here we go. What episode are we up to? Click. Episode 8. Episode 8, Lisa Kunde.
So I've got to give you some empathy, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Can you see me over there in the levels?
I can see you on the levels. You're very good.
Okay.
Lisa, I always ask my guests, the first question is always, how do you know me?
How do I know you? I know you through the lovely Tim Stewart and Dan McNulty from We All Want To and Tim from Scream Feed of fame. And hung out with you a bit at the Rock and Roll Writers Festival, which was really, really lovely, with you and Branko, wasn't it?
We only met a few months ago, yes, at the Rock and Roll Writers Festival in April.
Yes, where you were, on that horrible day that I had. Do you remember that?
Yes,
oh my
I do.
God.
Yeah,
yeah, that was weird.
So I was hanging out with Branko most of the time, and he ran into you.
Yes, lovely man, and he gave me good hugs.
How do you know Branko?
Oh my God. Okay, through Kelly.
Right, Kelly
yeah,
Lloyd.
Yeah. So he was living with Kel and Stephen, who I have known, I actually don't know when I haven't known them, back at Barden, and met the lovely Branko there. Yes, we discussed anxiety and mindfulness. Yep.
I also caught up with you recently when your old band got back together.
Yes, thank you for coming along, Scotty.
And so that band was Gravelrash.
Yes.
You're playing at Crowbar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm really interested to hear the story of Gravelrash because I want to know what happens. You know, you play in a local band for years and there's a whole community around that and, you know, you record some stuff and you play a bunch of shows. I want to know what happens after that and you live the rest of your life because you didn't, there was a big part of your life where you didn't play music, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, it was a pretty crazy time.
Do we want to go back to how did Gravelrash start?
Yeah. Okay, so Michelle and I were playing playing in a band. We practiced twice with a bunch of guys. One of the guys I lived with at Camp Hill down the road here. And it was called Cindy's Got a Lisp. And I remember Michelle, and it was my first band. I was actually borrowing a bass to play and I was gung-ho to be in a band. And whatever Michelle and I would suggest in playing, whatever we did, it was never really listened to. And one day I used to catch up with Michelle because Michelle played in Bat Swing Saloon years ago. I think she started playing in Bat Swing when she's only 16 or something crazy.
How old were you at this point when you started this band?
23. So pretty old, I guess, for music sort of time, which I reckon goes with being a female in a band. We're on the...
Do you think women start later in music?
Look, I don't reckon that happens now, and it varies. You know, Kel started really young, Michelle started really young. However, it took a long while for me to get the confidence, I guess, to do it. I started learning guitar when I was 10, but it was always a big thing, and not coming from a family that I guess that thought music was a valid experience. I mean, Mum even said to me the other day, you know, she'd prime me for being a superstar softballer and tennis player rather than ever going into music. So it was a different background. So
you were in a sporting family.
I was in a very sporting family. And when I reached being a teenager and I just would draw and listen to Triple Z on the back steps, my cousin used to come over and record his albums on our stereo because we had a Flash Pioneer stereo. And I started to just hear all his music, which was the Rolling Stones and Nick Lowe, Elvis Costello. And I thought, wow, what is this? And then he introduced us and my brother, who was younger, to music. And we started to really just get into it. And my brother was actually, he died about 10 years ago, but he was truly inspirational. He went, when he was 18, he'd gone through high school, but in 18, he followed Echo and the Bunnymen and the Damned around Europe. Yeah, he would do that sort of stuff and then just send records home to me. So, yeah, we had this alternative life to what our parents actually wanted, and it frustrated them unbelievably. So, but just confidence-wise, it took a while. Going back, Michelle and I then started just getting together, doing some stuff.
What year was this?
Yeah, it must have been 90.
1990, right.
Yeah.
Were you at uni at the time?
I was. Yeah, I was going to uni, doing an arts degree, film and media, and Australian studies. And I was going out a lot, mainly to escape the guy that we were living in because he wasn't very nice to me. And I'd hang out at a mod club with Michelle and Carl. Carl's from Purple Avengers. And slowly, you know, we were just getting to know each other. And then I went to India for a bit, came back from India and tossed up whether to be a Hari or play in a rock and roll band. Did the rock and roll band with Michelle. And Colleen, who plays drums, I went to school with. And we roped her in for a practice. We had another girl singing with us who was a mate of my brother's. And I actually don't ever know whatever happened to her, but we caught up at a dinner party at Colleen's place, and met Helly for the first time. And Michelle and I had already seen Helly around from going out, so Funkyard and all those sort of days. So we'd probably dance together on to crazy stuff and bonded over Stooges, Mudhoney, L7, Babes in Toyland, that sort of stuff.
So the proto-punk from
Proto-punk.
a few decades ago, and
Yeah.
then the current kind of grunge
Absolutely.
and riot girl stuff that was
Yeah,
happening.
definitely. Michelle, I remember, gave me, I have these great tapes that she gave me. She gave me Raw Power. I've got a Babes in Toyland from Helly. And my brother was really into Mudhoney, and I was as well. And we were both into Dinosaur Jr. So it was a bit of that. But, and also great thing that Michelle introduced me to, because I grew up in Cleveland and rejected. I went to a bogan school, and I'm proud to be. But I was into more Kate Bush and all that stuff, and anti-AC/DC, Black Sabbath, all that stuff. But Michelle had the best Black Sabbath and Motorhead collection, and did me a bunch of stuff. So that was it. That was the morphing, really. I think we just started out, Fuzz Babes was pretty much covers of the Stooges. We used to do No Fun, I Want to Be a Dog, something else. Bunch of covers.
Were there a lot of all-women bands around Brisbane at that time?
Yeah, no. So the other band around at that time that I can remember, and there probably are others but that escape me, but Dream Poppies were around. And I think also Isis. So they were more the folk. One was folk, sort of, in that sphere, so playing with Tooth Fairies, and a lot more, I guess, was Mulaney before Woodford Festival, and Dream Poppies were pop. So we were the noisier ones, and we practiced next to Bud and Powderfinger and the Grim Rippers, so who's now Jeff in 6 Foot Hick. And those guys, Jeremy was going out with Hallie at that time. Yeah, so we were really in that boy noise sort of stuff because we were into it.
I'm kind of interested in some of the mundane aspects of being in a band back in the 90s, because since I've been playing music, just the way of getting gigs and getting the word out has been very online focused.
Yeah.
So
right,
in the early 90s, if you wanted a gig, was the Valley the main music place, or was the city still more where it was happening?
Yeah, it was the city. It was the city. Yeah, so it's Crash and Burn. Where else did we play? Parties.
If you wanted a gig in a club or a pub.
Yeah, we didn't really try really hard, I've got to be honest.
How do you get those gigs? Do you call someone on the phone? Do you send them a fax? Do you send them a letter?
Well, we were pretty savvy, and we didn't know this at the time, but I was working in real estate advertising. Colleen worked at her family printing company, and Michelle and Hallie both have arts backgrounds. Hallie is a graphic designer. So the three of us together, I did media releases and fax them out, and Cole would do the printing for our posters. We do a poster run. That was what you did. We did interviews in Time Off magazine, so that's what we did. I think we were all working full time too. So simultaneously, we were doing both way back then. So even when we played gigs, we'd have to do it on the weekend. We practiced incessantly. We were perpetually worried of stuffing up, basically. I think it's that female thing of trying really, really hard to prove yourself all the time, because we were severely knocked down quite a lot.
In what way?
Well, boyfriend-wise, never took us seriously. I'd say that was probably for half of us, so 2 of us, mine particularly.
They just weren't supported?
No, they thought it was crap, and I was constantly told that. Yeah. So and that really knocked actually quite a lot of self-confidence, and I think for that reason, I never thought I'm going to give up my work to become a rock and roll star. I wasn't actually even really interested in that. We really were into that riot girl sort of stuff, I think, too, without being aware of it.
Do you mean the ideology? Because from what
Yeah, the ideology before we even heard the riot girl movement.
Yeah.
We were doing it.
Because as I understand, the riot girl purists weren't actually about becoming rock stars and taking over the world in that way. They were about creating their own scene for their own kind of people.
Absolutely.
And supporting each other in that.
That's exactly it. And in the beginning, not even just for us, but I would say, I reckon I'd say from the majority of bands at that time were not about rock stardom.
Right.
Yeah, without bringing... I'd say Scream Theatre were the most active and the most focused on, I guess, pursuing that. That's not to say they weren't fitting, but they were a different breed altogether. They'd started a lot earlier as well, I reckon, but all that alternative stuff was about staying alternative. And it was sub pop. So it was about being anti-corporate. It was about doing it yourself. It was about doing everything. It was about being independent.
Is that something you actively talked about within the band, like
No.
what you want to do, or just the direction you found yourself going?
No, it was our values. And I think that's actually, I didn't know that at the time because I wasn't doing psych, but just knowing we connected as friends because we were all interested, we had the same values of life, really. We knew we loved music. This is what we loved about music. We never wanted one person to be out front too much. We were really quite feminist without being aware that we were feminist. But I'd say the same was for the other guys. And it's only been in hindsight, recently, that I've been hearing of what actually happened and how we were sometimes put aside a bit and not regarded as serious, which irked me. I was probably the most serious in the band about that, actually. And I was probably more the one that was on megahertz quite a bit, and I was probably a bit more out there, I think, at that time too, actively socially justice-y.
Were you an announcer on Megahertz or just a guest?
Guest a couple of times, and they were great. Triple Z were amazing for us as well. We got played, so that helped. And, we got gigs through practicing together, and it would just be, we're playing, do you want to play with us? That was always it. We perpetually played first, but we actually didn't really care at that time. Now we do. Now I was like, what? What the fuck? Why do we always play first? Why do we get not paid anything? But anyway.
Did the crowds like you?
Yeah, always. And it was always fun. We were always really doubtful of why. But, and it's only now we were kind of saying, wow, we've actually played some pretty heavy stuff. It was awesome. We wrote cool songs for what that time was. I mean, it's very much of the time. But I never knew that at the time. I just always had that, this is shit, we're not serious musicians. And we got that quite a lot, that feeling that we weren't serious musicians.
When was the first time you went in to record these songs?
We submitted a demo to Triple Z for a competition and we won. So Triple Z paid for our recording. We recorded the EP Wedlock. So, yeah, thanks to Triple Z. I don't even remember when that was, maybe 91? So pretty soon after starting.
Where'd you record?
We recorded with Brad and Gilbert. It was in the Valley somewhere. And then it went to Magoo and he did something with it. Name escapes me with what people do. He pretty much mixed it, got it ready, and was at Red Star, I think it was then.
At Albion?
Albion.
That's still there.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
we practiced there.
Oh,
I think
cool.
I practiced at Red Star with every band I've ever been in.
Yeah, and that was great. And it sounds great. I really love that EP actually now. Yeah.
And when did the album come?
The album. So, yes, that was weird. So we played a lot in Melbourne. I can't think of the year, maybe 94. But, yes, it's interesting, this album business. We used to play in Melbourne more often than Brisbane because we made really good friends with a band called Mace and Velvet Hammer. We also played with, Powder Monkeys and, that sort of noisy, UMI. We played with quite a lot of bands down there. And Dave from Board came and saw us play, who had something to do with Magic Dirt and Lindsay Gravina. Anyway, he approached us and said he'd like us to do an album. We went down and recorded with Lindsay Gravina and did Blood Blister. However, I don't know, it was a strange experience though. We weren't, I think, really happy with it, but we actually didn't know that at the time. It just sort of just happened really quickly and it was out of our control and it was very rushed. And I think Hallie and I were both sick at that time. We used to always get sick because I think it was that way of singing and playing a lot in Melbourne. We'd get a lot of respiratory illnesses and come back really, really exhausted. That real grunge stuff of yelling and and we were exhausted, and it was not great.
Did you do that? Any of the Courtney Love, like gargling whiskey and smoking a pack of cigarettes before vocals?
No, we were really straight edge. Actually, we were really straight edge and get incredibly pissed from our rider. So, and then, but quite often not do that. Yeah, we'd have blowouts. Maybe whenever we played at Geelong was pretty insane, actually, and do that sort of shenanigans because we go to parties and stuff afterwards because it was fun. We also played in Tassie with Little Ugly Girls, who were amazing, and they're the Dacios in Melbourne now, so they were awesome. And that's where we connected with. They were our mutual friends in independent rock, so we had that common bond, you know, of we're doing this ourselves. And
I was watching the Dacios on Amateur Hour, that web series,
oh, yeah.
just like last night or something.
I love them.
They're great.
Yeah, they are awesome. Look, Linda is just she got us to play with them with Bikini Kill.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, at Hobart.
What was that
at
like?
the pier. It was insane, you know. Well, we stayed with them as well. We played with those guys. It was all independent art, and the Hobart scene was very inspiring, and they all then went on to move to Melbourne. But it was Mouth, some 10,000 Clowns or some, who were fantastic. Little Ugly Girls, Bikini Kill. Well, open and amazing. Kathleen Hanna is incredible, you know. So we just found that we had a lot in common. It actually was an incredibly easy relationship at that time. It was fun.
Well, it sounds like the ideology you were subconsciously working
Absolutely,
under
yeah.
meshed right in with her
Meshed
whole
right
deal.
in. Yep, we meshed right in. It was about just being our own people and sticking together and very inclusive. Yeah, yeah.
Did you keep up with the Bikini Kill people?
No,
after that? Oh.
No, I actually don't know whether Linda Dacio, she possibly could have. I mean, it's Linda and Bean. They're the brother and sister team. They're incredibly amazing. Who Mindy now plays with, who played it with Fur. So I knew her. Yeah.
Did the album Blood Blister get much interest?
No, and we didn't even try. And I've got no idea why. I think it was a weird time. We've only just started to talk about that now. So 23 years later, we were talking about the album thing and how none of us listened to it afterwards.
It sounds pretty good. I've been listening to it a lot this week.
Yeah, well,
like for the era, like the production sounds pretty
incredible.
good.
It was Lindsay Gravina. Yeah. I think it was taking the music side out of it. There was a lot for us as individuals going on at that time. We were starting to get tired of the grunge thing. Hallie particularly was starting to get tired of it, and she was really moving into a more of a spiritual sort of awakening of sorts. I think my relationship was falling apart at the time. Plus, my brother had, I won't talk about my the guy I was with had heroin was around. Like can we just mention that? Yeah. So let's just talk about Brisbane in the 90s. Then that was happening, and it started to invade my world basically.
Was it particularly pervasive in music?
Yes. Yeah, very much.
And it was a cheap and easy to get.
It was, yeah. And this is pre-Nirvana business. The Nirvana, you know, no, it was pre, and it kind of got its claws in to Brisbane. And some people moved to Sydney then and ramped it up. Other people moved to Melbourne to escape it, but it then moved to Melbourne. But it kind of entered my life, not me, but my life. And simultaneously, my brother was really, really sick. He had schizophrenia. So simultaneously at one time there, I had two people in my life in a psychiatric hospital. So that was going on, and I was just trying to keep my head above water. This is only in hindsight too. I didn't know this, you know. I was working full time. Hallie was starting to drift away, and the album wasn't really doing anything. Fur had come onto the scene, and it was splitting us a bit because they got signed. The Valaheen thing came on board, and we weren't. Fellaheen record label. So this was the runoff. This is a spill-off, I guess, from the Nirvana thing. Bands just started coming to Brisbane and signing people.
Okay.
And Fellaheen, which was a record label, started.
Right.
And
they were just signing all these bands that sounded like Seattle bands.
Yep.
Right.
Fur were pretty much the only other band that were similar to us, being all women, even though we didn't really sound the same. But we started to get played off a lot against them. People really close to us sided with Fur, and it became really hard for us to get a gig,
How do you even side with one band over and if the people in the band aren't actively feuding, it's not like an Oasis versus Blur thing. Like, how do you say I'm taking this person's side?
It goes on the music, I suppose, of some music having more credibility. For some reason, we didn't really get it. I mean, it's not amazing. I'm not going to proclaim that we were the greatest band. We were probably pretty crap, really. But we definitely just went with the punk thing. That's what we were about. And so were Fur. Fur are great, actually. Mindy's awesome. But we didn't really ever, it was either what they do, I mean, it's like anything. You have two female bands, we'll choose one female band. So one female band would get all the supports, and then we get occasionally. So we got the whole gig, but probably Fur got the L7 gig, the Babes in Toyland gig, so we got, that was how, it was like, wow, wonder when we're going to get it, because we should have played with L7, we should have. So that becomes part of our conversation then of why don't we get the bands? Why don't we have a manager? Why do our boyfriends, the people close to us, like that other band and not us? So that split us subconsciously.
Was Blood Blister put out on a record label?
Yes. What was it on? Shock.
Oh, Shock. So you were signed to Shock?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think. I don't even know. I erased it from my memory. I've got to be honest. I hated it. Yeah, I hated it. I also I started to really dislike music. The nicety of friendships in bands split. I really disliked the introduction of labeling and the labels. And it split people, and it became a lot more competitive. And really, honestly, on a personal front, the stuff with Helly, it was on an emotion level like a relationship breakdown at that time, and I didn't even know that, which we've had to talk about. It was not pleasant. And then the three of us kept on going, and we had great gigs in Melbourne, played again, but Cole moved to Melbourne. And then I just decided my relationship with my partner had broken up, and I thought, I'm going to India and Japan. I'm out. So, and that was the end of the 90s for me. And it was the end of the 90s, literally. Yeah. But I was over it, and it wasn't really nice. I didn't enjoy going out anymore. I didn't feel the same camaraderie. So I became quite disillusioned, I must admit, with music.
Was there a particular event where the band said, we're breaking up? Or did you just drift away?
No, we just drifted away. So Cole moving to Melbourne was a big thing. And for ages there, we were saying, yeah, we're going to move to Melbourne and do it. And then I just thought, no, I actually really want to live overseas. To be honest too, I thought I was too old to be playing in music. That is totally, honestly true. I thought, I'm 29. I can't still play in a rock band. That's too old. I want to live overseas. I want to learn a language and do other stuff. But consciously, I thought I was too old to be in a band, which is insane now when I think about it. Insane.
So after you left the band, you did go to India?
I did. Went to India with my ex-boyfriend. Yeah. And we were supposed to part then in a nice way in India. Went to ashram, went to festivals. So this really was Helly and Mike, because Helly and I were really good friends through that time. We go to meditation class and be generally hippies together. It was a lot of fun. Do a lot of illegal things probably together too, which you can imagine that came on board. And yeah, so went to India. We had a great time. And then just on the week before I left, he said, I've also got a working holiday visa for Japan. So followed me to Japan. And we stayed really good friends, but it was a tough experience and also a beautiful experience as well. So we didn't have any work when we arrived in Tokyo. India was amazing. Yeah, loved it. I had already been to India before too when I was 22.
So right before the band started?
Before the band? Yes, because I was going to become a Hari or
Yeah.
yeah. So that happened. Went back there. We had 4 months there. Went to Japan. Neither of us had work lined up, of course. So we sold stuff in Harajuku. Mainly he did. And we met this lovely Japanese guy who had a secondhand store in Harajuku. We stayed there for a couple of days in the top of his clothes store. And then he said, I've got friends out in a little village in Nagano. Do you guys want to go and live out there? We went, yeah, radio. We didn't even know where it was. They drove us out there, and that's where we stayed for the whole of summer, working at a guest house and in the middle of the mountains and living with Japanese people. And it is actually one of the other than being in the band, I've got to admit, one of the most amazing parts of my life. And I continue to think about what makes me happy, do that. And it's things like going on a bike through mountains or eating Japanese food or onsen.
Getting out in nature a lot?
Absolutely. We lived in the middle of the Alps in a village of about 200 people. And he was putting in gardens. And then at the end of the day, I'd go out and look for wild vegetables and gather all the wildflowers. So the vegetables and herbs were for the kitchen because it was a whole food Japanese guest house, so traditional Japanese. Collect all the flowers to do the front of the foyer. So the guest house was an old schoolhouse too. So, it was filled with art, woodblock painting, and it was an amazing experience. So collect all that. And so a lot in nature. We'd go to an onsen. That was our bath. We'd go to the local onsen. And it was in the middle of pine trees, and it was magical.
It sounds like the part of a novel 2/3 of the way through that's like the magical getaway before everything comes crashing down.
Totally.
Like the
relationship
where they go to
wise.
Verikino and Dr. Zhivago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, it was just I don't know. Well, yes.
It sounds like you should write a novel incorporating that part of your life into it.
Oh, really? Wow.
Have you ever done a writing?
No, I write now as a researcher. Yeah. No, it was great. I loved it. And I learnt so much about it. I mean, at the end of that, when I eventually got home, I was dumped at the airport. So I crashed into oblivion, depression for months and months. And Stephen Kelly's partner was really my best friend, I think, through that process. And I didn't even know, I didn't know about mental health other than my brother with schizophrenia. He was also incredibly unwell when I got home. And I just landed straight back into serious land and had a return ticket to Japan all the time. And I thought, I just didn't know what to do. So I stayed. Yeah.
And what did you do when you came back?
Stared at some 1950s curtains in a granny flat under a house in Dutton Park for about 6 months and contemplated my life and experienced existential angst, and then got a job at a call centre for the Department of Justice for Spur, and had another nervous breakdown, and then went to work for police in crime reporting and did that for about 6 years. So shift work, police, taking crime reports. And that service stemmed out of the Fitzgerald inquiry. So it was civilians. That was one of the recommendations, that civilians record all police interaction. So it was 24 hours. It was like communications, but you did their crime reports. So you record all the details about suspects, complainants, the offence, anything, drug related, murder, sex, all crime. Yeah, it was documented.
Did that take a toll on you emotionally?
Not really. Until, no, not really. I did that for a while. I was okay.
Was it
Then it did.
You're
Eventually it did. Yeah.
You're the psychologist here, but to project
wasn't then.
something, to
Yeah.
propose an idea, was it maybe that you'd been focused on your own problems for so long, having a hard time? Was it a relief to focus on other people's tragedies?
Yeah, I didn't even think of it. No, it wasn't tragedy. I actually just really like working at QBS. Well, going back, you can see how I was pretty much a Triple Z head. And, in that anarchy, I'd played in bands where my boyfriend was arrested by the police while we were playing. So I was pretty it was Pig City, before that. So I was coming in after. So I thought it was hilarious that I was working at the police and getting to know police. And they were fantastic. I loved it. I loved working with them because they were such an odd group of people and I was fascinated by their personality.
What are cops like?
They were great. They were awesome. Of course, with every crazy male culture, there are odd ones, but I didn't really have much to do with the odd ones. Occasionally, you get the weird conversation because we were over the phone, and recording them. But after doing that, I moved into equity and diversity. So I got a job in research with equity and diversity because I got bored with the call centre thing and the shift work as well. It was exhausting. Plus, a couple of days in a row, there was an operation where it was historical child sex offences started to become reportable, and I was working there then. Plus, there was the Morecambe investigation. There's a bunch of stuff anyway, and I just thought, I'm over this. I'm over doing report after report of this, and they're graphic. It's very, very graphic, as you can imagine.
Was that the part where it did start to affect you?
It started to affect me, but I was fine. Yeah. No, it didn't really affect me at all, which is bizarre. And I've got no idea why, because we were never debriefed at all. And yeah, nothing. So anyway, I worked into equity and diversity. I was just tired of being a data entry person and wanted to do more stuff. And equity and diversity did a research with police, and I did a project of why they wanted to separate, why they were leaving. And this is where I gained a real insight into police. Most of them actually really did want to do good things. They actually did want to make a difference. And I gained this real insight of they're kind of a really admirable bunch of people. They really are the do-gooders in some ways. And I started to realise how amazing are they to deal with all the shit in life. All the shit. And I continue to have that respect. They were amazing for me while my brother was unwell because I had quite a lot to do with them. I had to, a lot actually. And I then worked in media after that. I was seconded to public affairs and from film and arts, But look, I then had to move back to crime reporting because that was a secondment. They were all secondment. So my brother passed away in this time, and which was horrendous. It was a tragedy beyond belief. And on about my week back at police, I spoke to the police officer who I had spoken with to do with my brother. I spoke to him. And it all just started to crash down and I had to leave. And I actually worked next to the guys who did natural disaster identification. So they had gone to the tsunami and Bali and also the chinchilla burning. I don't know if you know those things.
Yeah,
but
the hotel fire.
Yeah, the hotel fire.
Yeah.
They worked right next to me and I'd have lunch with them and one of them said, Lisa, you should be a psychologist. You'd be an amazing psychologist. And I just went, yeah, really? I don't know why. And then they became my referees and I started psych. And I was in grief pretty much the first year of uni, and it's a blur. I can't remember uni at all. And then slowly it became my focus, and it got me through that time.
You don't have to answer this if you don't feel comfortable, but do
Yeah.
you mind me asking what happened to your brother?
Well, I'm going to give you some empathy. I hope you're okay. Are you okay with all this? Is it too much for you?
I mean, I'm the one asking
I just
about
thought
your personal
I feel like
life.
a psych. I'm totally comfortable. I had lots and lots of psychology. Yeah. What happened to him? He had schizophrenia, and the way he medicated was through alcohol and lots of cannabis, mainly alcohol. And he hated his illness. He hated being unwell. He was incredibly bright, and it all unraveled for him while he was studying genetics. He passed away. Basically, I'm not going to give you the ins and outs, but he had a heart attack, and it was mainly through detoxing on his own. And I don't know if that was intentional detox or he withdrew without the alcohol, but he passed away. Yeah. So it'll be 11 years ago now. And it was a pivotal part of my life of I need to start doing something that is really important to me, that makes a difference, you know. I really was living in honor of, and it was music, the music. I've got all his record collection, which is complete Damned, complete Echo and the Bunnymen, complete Sub Pop. What else have I got there that's just amazing?
Because he was so influential on your own musical.
He was, yeah. And because of his illness, of when he got sick, he pretty much stayed in that period of time, music-wise.
Right, because I guess that was familiar.
It was familiar.
And
It was his safe
comfortable.
place. Yeah. And which was wild sometimes, you know, because my boyfriend and I'd have to he lived for a while at the back of Byron, and police would call, and we'd have to get up at 2:00 and go and get him, you know, or help him at 2 a.m. And he would have Mudhoney on repeat, you know, of this record just going rah, rah. So we'd walk into some mayhem sometimes. So hence I didn't listen to Mudhoney and Dinosaur Jr. for a very, very long time. I remember going to a gig. I'd just gotten home from Japan, actually, and Tim and Kelly did Dinosaur Jr. covers at the Empire. I've only just remembered this. And I remember howling. I was just bawling in front of Timmy and Kel. And, of course, got millions of hugs from those beautiful people. But, yeah, it's totally, you know, that's music, isn't it, really, Scotty? It just touches your heart and triggers memories that are hard, but you get through them and really touch your soul. And now I love it, you know. It's good memories and self-awareness and growth for sure.
So you went into psych.
Went into psych. Changed my life. Love it.
After the first year, which you don't remember, what do you remember about
And I had
the
an
rest
amazing
of it?
tutor too that got me through that, I remember. After that, got into it, got new friends, beautiful friends from psychology, started to... Look, I was really in psych world, and because it was a tough course, I had to do really well. Because I had a mission to get into masters and be registered. And that became my focus, really. I vanished from music, vanished from a lot of stuff, actually. I really stepped out and away from friends. So Colleen was still we've been friends ever since. So I've been with her ever since. You know, I'd have lots of times of just sleeping at their place, actually. And they'd haul me out to gigs in Melbourne. Michelle was still friends. Helly and I parted ways, which has been lovely to reconnect with her. So very much focused on psychology and being an adult.
What was it about psychology that appealed to you?
Human behaviour. You know, I studied arts and I loved cinema and I loved people. I guess just from my brother Paul experience, it was I don't want ever people to experience this loneliness that I had experienced, I guess, because no one should ever have that. So that real desire sounds so corny, but it's totally true.
Maybe a bit of the cop ethos rubbed off on you, wanting to be a
Absolutely.
do-gooder.
Yeah, definitely. I always had that. I studied Buddhism too with my boyfriend. This is pre-Japan, and through the band. So that was my focus, not the egocentrism of
Rock and roll.
rock and roll. I really hated it, Scott. I really struggled. Yeah, which I guess Helly had that year or two before me. Yeah, I was very much into the being no one going nowhere experience.
So while you're studying psych, is there a preset career path once you graduate?
I just wanted to be in psychology. I went trauma, so the police. That was my plan, PTSD. I wanted to work with the police. I wanted to go back as a police psychologist. They fascinated me. Their line of work fascinated me. Human recovery fascinated me. The brain. I loved neuro as well. The brain is my passion. Yeah, I love it. And healing the brain, because I totally believe in it, that it's possible. Yeah, so that was life-changing. So, you can see how things just slowly morphed. It was one door open and I just move in. And that's pretty much been my whole life. Something would say, do you want to do that? And I go, yeah, rightio, right on, and do it. So that's been it. Sometimes I've just thought, fuck, I've really got to sit down one weekend and make career choices, but I actually haven't. It's just, if a door opened, I went, yeah, rightio. And it's been awesome.
Can you foresee in the future a time when psychology is no longer the main thing, of something new coming along again?
Well, it kind of did in a way, because I'm doing research now. So I'm doing suicide research and prevention. Yes. So there is a plan. I love psychology. I could never be a psychologist 5 days a week. I'm way too sensitive, and I'd never be a 10 client a day person. I love music. The plan is to one day have a whole food Japanese restaurant in a mountain and simultaneously live at the beach, because I escape to nature all the time. My parents live at Rainbow Beach. I grew up half the time at Byron. I'm half a hippie, and being with good people always. Yeah. So that's the plan when psych comes to an end. But I think people will always be in there. I'd probably always want to I'd always maybe want to have a private practice of doing that. Yeah. And I'm in addiction, that sort of field, music.
Do you do any clinical psychology work at the moment?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So I work 1 day a week now. I was working 3 days, and then I was doing 6 days a week for ages, and it was burning me out. I cut it down to do just 1 day now a month at a private hospital in a detox unit. So I do relapse and recovery, addiction sort of stuff.
And you're doing the research at Griffith the rest of the time?
5 days a week, full time.
What was it like researching the farmer's suicide paper?
Interesting.
Was that the first major kind of research paper you'd been involved in?
Yes, definitely. So I'd done the research with police, but that was internal. This was my first paper. It involved interviewing farmers from Queensland and New South Wales. It also involved interviewing relatives, so the next of kin of farmers who died by suicide. So that was it. It was a psychological autopsy study. So that is interesting, because it was really like police. It was going back almost to the scene of a crime. And this, though, takes talking to someone about another person who's died, all of their life events. So childhood, everything in their life. So interviews were about 4 to 5 hours in length, and often heartbreaking. And you're also talking to people who have experienced trauma and never spoken to anyone about it. It wasn't counselling in any way. It's impossible. But even just openly and non-judgmentally allowing someone to revisit their trauma, they said they found healing. So that in itself is something that's emerged out of this kind of study, is that people don't need a formal therapeutic session. They just need to be given some empathy, Scott, and open to non-judgmentally listened to, that their story is validated. Yeah, and most of those ladies were then followed up through a focus group because it was mainly spouses. And I went out and visited a bunch of them in Winton for what they want in their community, so suicide research and prevention stuff. And most of those ladies went on to do mental aid, first aid training so that they can be champions in their neighbourhood, because it was the midst of drought. So, and I'm just completing the second paper now for that, which is a qualitative paper. And it's just the experiences precipitating their death. So what happened, and yeah, it's interesting.
Was there a big gap in the research?
Yes.
Before?
Yeah. So no one had ever, lots of stuff's been speculated, I guess, about farmer suicide. Drought is the number one. They just say, yeah, it's the drought, and that has to be it. So no one's ever sort of seen how that happens. Well, what is it about the drought? What is it about they live so far away and don't have access to services?
Or even, if not professional services, at least like support networks.
That's it. What is it about being a farmer? Yeah. So this is that. It was the experience of being a farmer. And, it's just traditional stuff. They live gender roles. And what has emerged is clinicians and health promotion programs need to be aware that we're not talking about feminists out there, We're talking about gendered division of labour, and we need to be respectful of that. And in dealing with that, we need to know how to speak to men. And work is really, really important to them. Plus, they don't earn any money. In some ways, I've actually thought it's really similar to rock and roll. It's a masculine culture. They don't ask for help. It's weak to ask for help. They use alcohol to self-medicate. There are gendered roles. It's incredibly similar. They don't earn a lot of money. They all earn less than $25,000, but it's their passion.
A big factor in cases where farmers committed suicide, relationship breakdowns was a big one, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, it was. Did you see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we say died by suicide. We don't say committed anymore.
Okay.
That's actually, but that's okay. That the media aren't onto that either, as you can understand why. But yes, relationship breakdowns for a certain number of people. A really big thing that is underestimated with men is the importance of relationships. And when there's relationship breakdown, they lose a lot. They don't only lose emotional support, they lose a lot in terms of financial. For farmers, it can mean losing the farm. And it can mean not only losing their farm, but their parents' farm. It also means losing custody of children, and they're left alone with nothing.
And no one to pass the farm on to.
No one to pass the farm on to. So it's multi-layered and it's complex, and they don't tell anyone. They don't have the skills too in problem solving and knowing it's going to be okay. They don't even know that they can go to a lawyer and get help. They can't afford to go to a lawyer as well. So sisters come on board. The sisters become their support, and they're usually the ones that I've spoken to, the sister, because the ex-spouse isn't on board anymore.
Was part of the research making recommendations about what can be done?
Yes, because it was funded by the Queensland Mental Health Commission, and for the Queensland Mental Health Commission, and also the Australasian Centre for Rural and Remote Mental Health. The coroners from New South Wales and Queensland are also our project partners. So it's all going to supporting family members bereaved by suicide. So this is it's great. I mean, I love that too, that research makes a difference.
So you're finding psychology rewarding?
Love it. I love it. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I do.
And
I talk a lot, Scott.
That's the point.
I'm going to have
it's
a cup of tea. I'm just going to have a sip of my tea.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do you want some more?
And this is actually a really interesting thing. Being a psychologist, I love hearing other people's stories. I hate talking about me.
It occurred to me, how did you go, speaking of empathy, how did you go talking to all these farmers and farmer spouses who, as you say, it's a still fairly patriarchal kind of society out there. So as someone who played in a very feminist grunge band, how did you connect with those people?
Listen non-judgmentally. And then really. And these women are also incredibly strong women, so that cannot be underestimated as well. And also, I'm doing a bereavement study as well, and there are people actually, even though they may not know it, in their language there is quite a lot of strengths. Even in their telling of the story, I had that in the back of my mind, that they're incredibly courageous to share this. And then it just started, I became aware, hang on a minute, these are really traditional ladies. And that's cool. I really did. And I also started to just realise that I guess a lot of this stuff is just what my mum and dad do. Mum makes the appointments for my dad. That isn't because my dad is weak, and it's not because my mum is also a pushover, because my mother is not a pushover, and she's given me most of my strengths. But that's just the way it is. And that's okay.
Even amongst people who may not expressly identify with feminist values, you still find strong women.
Absolutely. Yeah, on something. In saying that, there is some aspects of some females. But whenever I'd have, I can, and that's not to say I'm not judgmental. I am incredibly not judgmental of some stuff with some women displaying. But none of those people are in my life. I don't encounter it. And if it's because I do in my line of work, absolutely, especially with addiction, most women that I deal with at the hospital have been admitted due to taking drugs due to trauma in their life. That's a really common thing with females, more so than men. So they are quite often in relationships too, from their history, where men are very dominant. And I have to listen non-judgmentally, I suppose. And also just explore why, as a psychologist. But yeah, you have to be like that. That's just part of being a psych.
What are the things that you are judgmental about?
I dislike it when women feel the need to have to put themselves second to their male partner or to a partner, even if it's a same-sex relationship. So that feeling the need that they have to give their partner some sort of kudos and undermine their own value. Do you get what I mean? When people do that? So you're asking someone about their experience, and instead of talking about their own experience, they'll deflect to their partner.
Oh, okay.
Which demonstrates a lack of self-worth, or simultaneously, subconsciously, wanting to give their partner self-worth rather than just being equals, or I've got no idea. But whenever that happens, I get this irk of like, fuck's sake. Not in a professional.
Sure.
Not, yeah.
Sure.
The two separate, But when it's at a gig and you're amongst people and normally people in music, we're talking about rock and roll too, you think they should be a bit more right on with relationships, but every now and again you'll get that sense, and unfortunately, being a psychologist, that I have to always be really aware of, because I actually don't want to enter into therapy with someone, is I have to have the boundary of not asking them why you just did that and why you felt the need. So I have to just go along with it and go, yeah, right, and then play along, but walk away going, that really shits me when that do it.
That is actually a really interesting area, even if they're not. I've definitely come across that, even if they're not actively putting themselves down, just but specifically as you brought up at a gig. So if there's like someone is playing.
It's a musician.
Yeah, and it's a musician and the partner has come along.
Yes.
I don't know what to do in those situations, in what to say to them, because you don't want to ignore that person, but I don't know. But the only thing you have in common is your musician,
musician
friend,
friend.
and talking about what they do in their music.
Absolutely.
And so what do you do? How do you relate to the partner?
Yeah. Ask what they've been getting up to. Yeah. Or, if you know that they've been practicing all week, how's that been? That sort of just asking, how's it going? Or how's work? Are you work? Especially if you don't know what they do. Because I've been in that situation. I've stood next to Kel at 1 million gigs and you're invisible to most people. That's something to do with Kel too. That's just because people go straight up to her, and it's that experience of acknowledgement of one person and a complete disappearance of the person right sitting. And it's hard.
I'm absolutely guilty of doing that, and I'm not. It's not because I'm trying to be rude to the other person.
You just say hello.
Yeah. It's just I don't know who that person is or how they.
Or you give them a compliment, especially if they've got something awesome on, and it's fine, to do that while they're with their partner. Oh my God, look how awesome you look. And I suppose it's easier when you're a female to be able to do that. And
there are certain compliments I think it's not appropriate for men to give. Yeah, because I go,
oh my God, fuck, that's such a great frock, and you go, oh, it's totally oppy. So, you go from that sort of stuff, which I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can be really a lonely experience for the people on the side. Yeah, they go home and it's all about their partner, their friend, which they love. I'm incredibly proud of my friends and of their achievements, and that they do what they love.
Yeah, there are definitely people I know whose partners no longer come out to gigs. Yep. I think that may have something to do with it.
Absolutely. It's an isolating experience for them. And that's not for everyone. That wouldn't be for everyone. Some people just don't like it anymore. People grow out of going to music, and especially our age, it's a rare breed of person who is still going out. So, when we played our gig, quite a lot of people had not been out for a really long time, but because they have children. And
it was really good to see so many people.
Yeah.
So we're talking now about the Gravelrash reunion, which happened a few weeks ago at Crowbar. Yep. How did that come about?
Oh, lovely Jeff Corbett.
From 6 Foot Hick.
Yes. So Jeff Corbett actually wrote probably about 2 or 3 lines in our Boys Germs song. He invaded our practice room one day, and I've got no idea why he did that or how we enabled him to do that, but he did, and gave us 2 lines in Boys Germs and then disappeared. One day he posted up on Facebook. It would have been the months before. Oh, so before that. So on the Saturday night, Michelle, Hallie and myself had caught up at the Purple Avengers, the Delirium Seeds, which is Carl's band, who he plays with Michelle, at the Stones Corner, down the road, yeah. And Michelle said, you know what, if someone offers us a gig, we should just do it. Right. Tuesday, so it must have been the Tuesday, because it was not Monday, it was Tuesday, because Monday I had a hangover still. Tuesday, Jeff Corbett posted on his Facebook that they were doing a fundraiser gig because they're going to France. And if there were bands that, who would they suggest for bands, and to private message him. And I thought, I'm going to private message him and see whether we could play. And it was a really just, would that be okay kind of thing? And really expecting he'd say, yeah, no, fuck, no, because you guys have not played for so many years and you're old. And then he said, oh, I think he said yeah. And I said, right, well, I just need to contact the others. And I think I contacted the three of them first and heard back from Michelle and Hallie, and they went, yeah, that's cool.
Was everyone still in Brisbane?
No, so right. Cole's in Melbourne.
Right.
Yes. And I was still really in contact. I've been, of course, with Cole, and she's only just started uni. So I was really half expecting she'd say no. So I let Jeff know. I asked Jeff the deadline. He said Thursday. Cole said yes. So we let him know, and that was it. We're doing the gig. And then so started practice. And Cole Cole just thought we'd roped her in. But when she got up here, I said to her, no. We were waiting. If you said no, we were not going to do it, you know. So that was the deal. Michelle said if Cole's not in, we're not in. And Jeff knew that. So that went, so that was it. It was cool.
So Helly's the one who you had a bit of a falling out with?
Yeah. So we kicked her out of the band. Yeah, it was very unpleasant and breaks my heart still and filled with a lot of remorse. But she was ready to go anyway, as she said. She knew that. But, you know, she didn't want to sing any of the songs anymore and she didn't want to turn up to practice. So that all had to come back. But I actually couldn't imagine not doing it with her. So I said that, you know, I just couldn't. It's just, yeah.
And was that all the fixing of the relationship that needed to happen?
Yeah.
Can't do this without
Water
you.
under the bridge. Yeah. You know, we'd all grown so much and, yeah, awesome.
I recently did a one-off reunion show with my band that broke up 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And you have heard on that in the end.
Yes, I did. It was,
yes.
yeah, I was really fascinated
Just
about that.
In the backyard.
Because you vanished after the gig, you said. You didn't catch up.
Oh, no, yeah. After we broke up, that was the last time I saw Ange because she moved to Japan very shortly after that. So that was only after 2 years. What is it like playing with a band that hasn't played together in, what was it,
23 years.
23 years.
Yeah. So, well, we did the one-off Boys Germs where we quickly all got together and on stage and then all vanished again. And that was weird.
Sorry, what was that?
We played, Purple Avengers played with Chopper Division at the Globe Theatre. And Michelle plays with the Choppers now, on and off. And she said, what about if we all just get up and play Boys Jams in between? So we did that.
And when was that?
That was October or November last year. So Cole came up.
Okay.
Yeah, for that. But I hadn't picked up a bass. Actually, I didn't even have a bass because it went missing, which is not another story. But we played Chopper's Gear and we played. And then this came back and I just contacted them. Well, we caught up at that show and had a really nice time. The music thing, I think, was always there. And we all... So Michelle still plays with Choppers and Hallie does her own thing with Cal Crilly in Helical Sun. So she never really stopped playing.
But you stopped playing.
I stopped playing. Yeah, so how was it for me? Shit scared. And I was telling Jeff that all the time, that I was really anxious and he would just go, yeah, you know, you guys are cool, right? He didn't really buy into the freak out thing, which was good. And it was really exciting that the other three were excited, so that motivated me. I played with Cole at a party in Melbourne beforehand, so I played bass and I had to prepare for that, which was Love Will Tear Us Apart. So I got blisters from doing that. I hired a bass from Carla Michelle to do that and thought, yes, I can do this. And then practiced every single night, bought a bass, bought an amp, bought... what's that thing that goes over here?
The strap?
Strap. Bought a rat pedal again, which is the same original pedal I had way back then. And every single night practiced. And then we practiced 3 nights a week. And then Cole came up 2 weeks beforehand. And then soon Branko came out and practiced with us, which gave us the drums. And slowly it just started to fall into place. And yeah, I think the last week we were ready, you know, we were ready to go. And
how'd your vocal cords go?
Oh, yeah. It was weird because I was blown away. I was scared of my vocals and Hallie was too because it was so noisy. Fine. Absolutely fine. Yeah. It wasn't probably to the same degree, though, that we used to do. We also didn't swear as much, which is half disappointing for me. I think Hallie was really protecting hers a lot more because she still does her other, but I kind of could let loose because I thought I can lose my voice and I don't really care. I don't have anything booked for Monday. I can hide in research land. But yeah, it was fun. It's catharsis, man. It was our therapy too for years, that yelling.
Well, I was there with Dan from We All Want To.
Oh, yeah,
on the
lovely
night, and I
Dan.
thought the show was amazing.
Oh,
I thought as a band,
gosh.
like I thought
Oh,
you
Lordy.
must have
You
done
don't know the
some warm up gigs because you were so tight on stage. I thought,
what?
yeah,
Really? Oh, God. That is so nice because the other three stayed on a high for days. I collapsed in an all-out down low on the Tuesday, saying it was terrible. I was terrible. I fucked it up. I was awful. I should never play bass. That's never happening again. And this is honest. It's actually not bullshit. And contacted all of them and apologized because it was awful. And they were all incredibly kind. And then by the Thursday, realised that was just incredibly fun. And I'd invested, the psych in me came on board as well of, look, we're talking about ego here. Your ego is now getting in your way. And this isn't a you experience, it's an us experience, and it rocked and we're awesome. And I wish we'd known that 23 years before, that we kicked ass, So I'm incredibly proud of those people too. I love them.
And you're looking to do a few more gigs now.
Yes, so we're going to hopefully play in Melbourne. We're trying to get the Dacios on board. I have a feeling I caught up with the 6 Foot Hit guys after we played and the others deserted me. But that's okay. I'm not bitter because I was on a bit of a high. I caught up with those guys anyway at the end of the night and ate their rider and plotted a Japan tour. I don't know if they remember that, but I'd like to go to Tokyo with them. So that is a possibility. Michelle, Helly and I also would like to get together and start a new band. So, yeah. So that's after the Melbourne experience and probably pretty soon we're going to start practicing and see what emerges out of that. So whether we're just going to see.
So you're really getting back into music again?
Loving it. Absolutely love it. It, again, because it was a catharsis for me way back then when I was 20s, right through 30. It is also now my creative outlet. Yeah, I mean, I love photography as well, but it's that group thing and it's that creating music. I can't believe the power of it, actually. And it transcends ego. There's something else that goes on with hanging out with your mates and creating a project and meeting it. And it's like the best project in the world, Yeah, and you don't have to publish or perish. We don't even have to worry about whether we ever make an album, whether we're signed, whether we ever get a gig. It's kind of come that full circle of being nothing and going nowhere sort of experience, that Buddhist thing. And Riot Girl, it's never left,
Lisa, thank you so much for talking to me today and telling the story of Gravelrash.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing I need to ask.
Crazy
You were
girls.
originally called Fuzz Babes.
Oh, yeah.
What was the story of the name change? Just quickly.
What do you reckon?
Okay, let me guess. So originally you were called Fuzz Babes. Was that a bit like reductionist? Just, they're the babes with fuzz pedals?
It was irony. Yeah, we thought it was hilarious. We, A, did not think we were babes. B, we used fuzz pedals. And it was awful. It became awful.
People didn't get the irony?
People did not get the irony. We were always taking the piss out of all the boy bands we played with, and no one actually ever got that. Hence playing, Motorhead, Stooges, Rock, Cock, yeah. And I don't know, did you see that review that I posted? Oh, Dan kept on posting that review and I blasted it.
What review?
So we had, I won't go into it probably too much because it's not very pleasant, but we were reviewed and it was basically referred to us as, dripping hot sex, blah, 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 blah. So going on in the background, we didn't know that was, someone described it as cockfest. We didn't know that it was. The 90s, Brisbane was a cockfest and we were not in on the joke, basically. So we changed. Plus, it was the same thing, Mudhoney, Soundgarden. Yeah. Sonic Youth. Oh, Sonic Youth, we didn't mention, yeah. The Pixies.
So just a hard-sounding compound word.
It was a hard, and it was hilarious. Yep.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Lisa. I'm glad I got to the bottom of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
makes me sick listening to past Scott with his good health. Ugh. If you want to check out the music that Lisa made with Gravelrash, it's actually pretty difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. There's not a lot of their music available online. They're not on Spotify. They're not on Bandcamp. They're not on iTunes, as far as I know. I have recommended to Lisa that they at least make their music available on Bandcamp, because you may as well, because it's free. You could maybe find a rare EP of theirs on eBay if you search hard enough for it. Gravelrash put out 2 records. There was the Wedlock EP and then the Blood Blister album. There's also a bit of footage of them on YouTube, both footage from the glory days in the 90s, including what looks like a gig on a ferry recorded on VHS, as well as some more recent footage from their reunion at Crowbar recently. None of the footage quite does justice to seeing the band live, so hopefully they'll be playing some more Brisbane gigs at some point in the future. Lisa had some recommendations to me. If you need some resources related to our talk of suicide, you can call Beyond Blue, Lifeline, the Queensland Aid Council, Q-Life, Kids Helpline, Suicide Callback Service, or the LGBT Hotline. Do stay safe out there. I do care about you, my listeners. Lisa's paper on suicide amongst farmers is freely available online and is actually quite an easy read, even for the layperson, even though it is an academic research paper. If you just search for the title, which is Pathways to Suicide in Australian Farmers, a Life Chart Analysis, you should be able to find it. I don't really have any other notes or addenda or corrections for this week. There are probably a million band names and old venues that have long since closed down that would be interesting that Lisa mentioned that you can look up if you like. A lot of it's quite hard to find. Not everything from the 90s survived to leave a trace on the internet, which is a shame. We're all dust in the wind, and who's to say that our own online footsteps will not be swept away just as quickly by the next wave that comes crashing upon our sociological shore. Oh God, I'm so sick. I need to stop talking. Rubbish. I don't know why my sore throat has also seemed to give me a scattered mind. But I'll be better next week, and I'll talk to you then. I just need to. So until next week, stay the fuck away from me if you want to be healthy. Don't let me cough on you or sneeze on you. Good night.